This is Carla of Gigglefest University coming to speak to Rabbi Rav Hanan Schlesinger, who is a rabbi in Israel. He's an Orthodox Jew, but he promotes Reform Judaism and is working on bringing the denominations, the conservative, the Orthodox, and the Reform together, so we begin speaking to each other and begin to understand where we are as people and not necessarily the boundaries we put on ourselves when we say, I'm an Orthodox Jew, I am a Reformed Jew. It doesn't really matter as long as we're honoring God and what God is about. And he also has done a lot of work with the Muslim Jewish community and bringing Palestine and Israel closer together. Did I get that right, Rabbi?
Look, to a large degree, you got it right. I would say it differently, but the minute I put myself out there, I have to accept that other people are going to say it differently. So I accept it.
Okay, now could you explain it in your terms and how you see it?
Okay. I believe that there are sparks of truth everywhere, and I believe that there is no one truth. There are many truths, and God, in my mind, is the kaleidoscope that brings together all the partial truths. And if I want to imitate God, if I want to be like God, if I want to be divine like God, and there is a commandment to walk in God's footsteps and imitate God, then one of the many things I have to do is to open myself up to collecting more and more sparks of divine truth. And I find those sparks among Reform Jews and conservative Jews. I add those sparks into my Orthodox Judaism. And then I find sparks in Christianity and Islam and in Palestinians and all different types of literatures and human beings. And in adding those sparks into my soul, I become a little bit closer to God. As long as I think that my truth is the only truth, then I'm certainly wrong. As long as I know that my truth is part of the truth, then I'm right. And the more and more partial truths I bring into my soul, the more right I am, although I'm still far from the full truth. Only God is the full truth because he's able to collect all the infinite partial truths. I can only come close to that, or not so close to that. I can only aspire in that direction. So I certainly live according to one way of life. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Buddhist, I'm a Jew. And I live according to Orthodox Judaism. But I know that that's only part of the truth. And I also want to, and I try to respect other Judaisms and other truths and bring a little bit of their sparks into my own soul and even into my own practice, certainly into my own heart. And in that way, like I said, I think I'm expanding and I'm becoming a little bit truer, a little bit more human, a little bit more godlike, and certainly a little bit of a better peacemaker.
I love your kaleidoscope analogy. It's so beautiful. And it really is what the world's about. So thank you so very much for explaining that. Where were you born?
I was born in New York.
And did you grow up in an Orthodox home?
I did not. I grew up in a home that was pretty secular and pretty unaffiliated. My parents had a membership from the time I was about 8 years old in a Reform temple, and I went to Reform Hebrew school, and I had a Reform bar mitzvah, and I learned everything I knew about Judaism until the age of 15 from Reform framework. When I was about 15, I joined Young Judea, American Zionist youth movement, and there I learned a lot more about Judaism and about Zionism, and my Jewish identity, my Zionist identity, was molded in Young Judea.
What made you decide to join this organization?
What made I fell in love with the girl who's the president.
Is she now your wife?
She is not, but we're still good friends.
Did you get married eventually or no?
I got married eventually. I have 4 kids and 7 grandchildren.
Oh, wow. How old are your kids? You don't look like you'd have 4 kids and grandchildren at the same time.
Hey. How old are my kids? My oldest is 33, I think.
Okay. And how old is your youngest?
My youngest daughter is about 27, 28.
Wow. I would never have dreamt that you had kids that old.
Okay, thanks for the compliment.
Now, you did tell me, as we were talking, what kind of job did your parents do? I'm sorry, my dog did not like how I moved right then. What kind of jobs did your parents do? Were they very much into Judaism, or did they inspire what you were doing?
The question was, what type of work did my parents do?
Yeah.
My mother was a housewife for most of her life, and she became a secretary, and later in life she became a travel agent. My father was an electrical engineer for all of his career.
Now, did they inspire you to go on a spiritual journey, or what inspired you?
Well, they directly inspire me. I don't know if they inspired me indirectly, unconsciously, without my knowledge, but I don't know of any inspiration towards Judaism that they implanted in me. And like I said, my joining of Young Judea wasn't related to search for Judaism. It was just, like I said, I had a crush on the woman, the girl who was president of the local Young Judea chapter. But I do have within my personality, I have a search for depth and a search for truth and sincerity, a search for the essence of things. So that led me always to ask, what is Judaism? What's really the purpose of it, and what's the essence of it? I didn't feel that those questions were answered in Hebrew school that I went to, and Young Judea began to give me some superficial answers, enough so that I wanted more. I wanted more answers.
So, where did you go to college, and how did you end up as a rabbi?
Well, after high school, I went to Israel for a year with the Young Judea year course, a program that brought graduates of Young Judea to the U.S., to Israel for a year. We spent time in a kibbutz, we learned Hebrew, we had Jewish studies in Jerusalem, we spent a month in a moshav, and I fell in love with Israel. I decided I wanted to make aliyah, that I wanted to spend my life in Israel. And during that year, myself, like a third of the other students on the program, became observant to some degree or another. We had this sense that Zionism is based upon Judaism, and in my case at least, it appeared to me that to be a Zionist without having a deep acquaintance with an appreciation of Judaism was like building a house with 2 or 3 stories without a foundation. So if I was already a Zionist, I had to find the foundation of that Zionism. Zionism, of course, is based on Jewish identity, Jewish peoplehood, Jewish continuity, Jewish history. Well, what's the meaning of all that? So I began to explore that through Jewish observance and through Jewish study. After a year in Israel, I went back to the US to go to college, but I didn't last more than a few weeks in college in America until I decided that I can't stay in America. I want to go back to Israel to study Judaism, to know who I am. So after a year of college, I held out for a year, and then I went to Israel at the age of 19 or 20, and I never really came back to America. I went to Israel to study Judaism. I studied Judaism for about 13 years. And in that process, I had more and more questions and some answers. I became a knowledgeable, observant Jew. And I decided I want to spend the rest of my life passing that heritage on to other young students. So I became a teacher of Judaism, became a rabbi. In Israel, 90% of the rabbis don't have congregations, don't have synagogues. Rather, they're teachers in different types of frameworks, whether a college or high school or elementary school. So I became a college-level teacher of Judaism. While I was teaching Judaism, I also went back to university, started a master's degree in Jewish philosophy, became a teacher of Jewish philosophy. I was on the junior staff of Hebrew University teaching Jewish thought for a few years. And until about the age of 47 or so, I taught Judaism and Jewish thought, Jewish law, Jewish history, Bible to generations of students here in Israel.
Rabbi actually does mean teacher, doesn't it?
Does rabbi mean teacher? I don't think. Tell you the truth, I don't know. I don't think it means teacher. It means someone of honor. It's a title of honor. But traditionally, what rabbis are is teachers.
Correct.
Traditionally, rabbis were not leaders of prayer. They weren't counselors. They were students and teachers of the tradition. It's only in modern times, in America, that rabbis became clergymen, became pastors, became leaders of prayer and officers of solace and support to communities. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just saying it's new.
This is really interesting because you're really giving me a new viewpoint that I never actually thought about before. I know that when we were talking earlier and you told me, oh, I'm bringing the reform, I lead the reform movement in Israel and I'm bringing people together. I may not have said it.
No, I'm not connected in Israel to any movement. I've never led the reform movement. I don't have any claims to be a leader, a religious leader in that sense, so no. But in Israel, we don't have too many reform synagogues. But in America, when I was a rabbi in America, from 2005 until 2013, I served as a scholar in residence and a teacher, as a consultant for many Reform Jews and conservative Jews and Orthodox Jews, for Reform rabbis, for conservative rabbis, for Jewish federations and JCCs. And I saw myself as being of service to all Jews. It doesn't matter what their denomination is. And the truth is not just Jews, but I taught in churches also. I taught in mosques. I saw my job as helping people to learn more about Judaism if they wanted to do so.
And that's really wonderful. And your goal is to bring together all the different religions. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, I believe both in universalism and particularism. I believe that the Jewish people are a particular people who, on certain levels, should stay separate from the other nations and maintain our identity, pass on our heritage, marry among ourselves, create vibrant communities, etc. But I also believe that Jews, Christians, and Muslims should understand each other and respect each other and learn from each other, support each other and love each other. And that means there has to be a balancing act between the separatorism and the coming together. It's not an easy balancing act to maintain.
Not at all. You seem to be doing a great job of balancing it. If you were the prime minister of Israel or the head rabbi, what would you want to see happen in Israel?
Well, first of all, I'm not qualified to be a head rabbi or a minister of the government, and I'm probably not practical enough. I'm more of a philosopher. I see all the sides to different issues. But in general, I would like to see more religious pluralism in Israel. I would like to see more respect for different ways of being Jewish. I would like to see less of a monopoly on Judaism held by one particular camp. And I'd like to see greater Jewish education in the schools, education about Judaism, Jewish history, Jewish heritage, Bible, Jewish law, but as our cultural heritage, not in order to force anyone to believe in a certain way or to act in a certain way. I don't think there should be religious coercion, not in the laws and not in the educational system. I would like to see Judaism as a heritage that people learn about and that they love and that they adopt when and in the fashion that's meaningful to them.
And so your goal is to bring more unity amongst the different fashions of Judaism. Would that be, am I right?
I really don't know what the word unity means. I don't use that word because I think it's too ambiguous and it means different things to different people. I want to see more understanding, and I want to see more acceptance. I want to see more tolerance. I want to see more listening. I want to see more respect. I want to see reconciliation and love, appreciation.
Okay, you sort of froze for a little while there. Could you repeat what you just said?
I had said that I don't tend to use the word unity because it's used often in many different senses, and I'm not sure in which sense it's going to be used in any different context. So I don't say I'm promoting unity. I'm promoting understanding and respect and listening and collecting of the sparks of different uncomfortable truths, expanding the soul to see in a pluralistic fashion different aspects of things. I'm for reconciliation, understanding, love, appreciation.
Now, you told me earlier that you did want to highlight the work you're doing between Palestinians and Israelis. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Absolutely. So I live a half hour south of Jerusalem. In biblical terms, it's between Bethlehem and Hebron. Bethlehem in the north, which is a 5-minute drive south of Jerusalem. Hebron is like a 40-minute drive south of Jerusalem. I live in the middle between those two areas. In Jewish terms, modern Jewish terms, it's called Gush Etzion. It's the area that many people call the West Bank, but I don't call it the West Bank. I call it Judah and Samaria. Particularly south of Jerusalem is Judea. And I call it what I call it, and I live where I live, because this is where the Jewish people were born. The Bible calls this area Judea and Samaria. The Jewish people have been calling it that for 2,500 years. I call it what I call it, and I live where I live because of the historical connection. I'm a Jew that's a member of a 3,000-year-old people. I see myself as not just a link in a chain of tradition, but rather every link is part of who I am, such that I'm really 3,000 years old. It's part of a collective. And I live where the Jewish people were born. I live where the Jewish people spent most of their life when we lived on our land. I lived in a place where there are archaeological remains and artifacts to remind us of our history from 2,000 years ago and 2,500 years ago. All the time we find these artifacts. And I have that sense of historical continuity, that the Jewish people is reconsummating its meaning and its essence and its connection to the land in our generation. I have the opportunity and the merit to be part of that rebirth of the Jewish people in our land, in our history. It's wonderful. There's nothing more significant in my mind that I could live my life for. But I understand that the way we Jews are reconsummating our connection to the land is at the expense of the Palestinian people. Our narrative and our historical connection to the land are so strong that I think they blinded us. They blinded many of us. At least they blinded me for 33 years of my life and prevented me from seeing that there's another people here also. Another people that are real, that are human, that have a historical connection to the land and have a national narrative and national aspirations, national rights. And I'm afraid that we Jews have been living out our truth while ignoring the Palestinian existence of Palestinian truth. I do not intend to retreat from my truth. I believe that Jewish people belong to this land. That includes Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. But I also believe the Palestinians belong to this land. And I'm not going anyplace. I'm staying here. Many people believe that the settlements are illegal and are a obstacle to peace. But I do not believe that. I do not believe in getting out of here, getting out of the West Bank. But I do believe that we have to live here without trampling the dignity and the rights of the Palestinian people. I think we have to be here in a different fashion, in a fashion that's more respectful and more accepting, and what I would say wider, expanding our understanding of what's real and what's true and what's legitimate. So that's, in a nutshell, a real nutshell, that's me. And 4 years ago, exactly 4 years ago, and minus 1 day, I think, 4 years ago, minus 1 day, I met Palestinians for the first time, and it changed my life completely. And I came to the things that I told you about. And together with two other people, one Palestinian and one Jewish, we founded an organization, an initiative called Roots. In Hebrew, that's Shorashim. In Arabic, it's Judor, with the Israeli-Palestinian Grassroots Initiative for Understanding Nonviolence and Transformation. We are, as far as we know, the only organization that brings together Palestinians and Israeli settlers, people who are neighbors but generally do not know each other and do not provide each other with dignity, don't relate to each other with dignity. We deny each other's national stories and national aspirations. We've created an oasis. We have a center that allows the two people to meet each other. Usually around here, every piece of land is either theirs or ours, Palestinian or Israeli, and you can't go into the other's land. But we've been able to found a center where the two sides can meet, and we have there many different programs. We have 3 different religious dialogue groups. We have a youth movement. We have women's photography workshops, little kids photography workshops. We have a music therapy group. We have we work with soldiers. We introduce them to Palestinians. We work with kids during high school and after high school to teach them the different narratives. We respond to violence around here. We try and make life better or easier for the Palestinians on many different levels. And we've seen hundreds of Palestinians and Israelis meeting each other and being transformed, opening up their hearts and their minds to see another truth and to become expanded and become tolerant and to try and hold both sides of the stick at the same time. It's amazing, it's transformative, it's powerful, and it's extremely precarious, extremely difficult. Every day is a challenge. Every day there are new obstacles. Every day we think it might come to an end, God forbid. But every day we're also growing stronger, both in numbers and in our understanding of what we're doing and what still needs to be done.
How amazing and wonderful. I'm impressed.
It's something that can't be imagined.
No, and I know as I was growing up and until recently, I thought Israel is just full of Jews. And now I'm learning, no, that's not true. We're full of all the different religions. And there's a real need to bring a feeling of, I'm going to use the word family, that we all, why don't we get along? What can we do to make ourselves get along instead of constantly being fighting and disagreeing? And you're doing it with your movement, and that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing and impossible. But we're doing the impossible.
Right. And the thing is, impossible also contains the words, I'm possible. You can make anything impossible very possible. And you're doing it, which is what's so amazing. What if you had a magic wand and you could just twirl it today and say, I want this done in Israel between the Palestinians and Israelis? What would you want to do?
First of all, each side has to learn the other side's language. Secondly, we have to create thousands of frameworks like Roots, like the organization that myself and my colleagues created, to bring the two sides together, to listen to each other till it hurts, and to see the truth of the other's narrative, and see that my own truth is only partial. We have to do a lot of listening and more listening. We have to do trauma therapy, actually, because both sides are traumatized and both sides are afraid of the other. And after we set this human groundwork, that's going to take years of intensive educational work and psychological work of creating a new narrative that respects who I am, but also respects who the other side is, then we'll be ready for peace negotiations. Peace negotiations are about boundaries and about resources and about money and about structures of government, about armies, and we need all that. We need a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis, but we can't engage in negotiations yet because the sides don't recognize the legitimacy of the other side. We're not ready for peace. We're not ready. We can't negotiate. We don't understand anything about the other. So we have to prepare all this human groundwork for negotiations and peace. And then when we get there, we have to sit at the table and come up with a solution that's going to satisfy as much as possible both sides. And in my opinion, in the opinion of the organization that I am part of, Roots, the solution has to be based to a large degree on connection and not on separation. The Oslo peace agreements and the current understanding of most people who call themselves peace advocates, whether in Israel or Palestine or in the US or around the world, talk about the two-state solution, and the two-state solution is understood to be a solution of separation, of building walls, and that walls and fences make good neighbors. We in Roots believe that separation creates ignorance and prevents human contact and ultimately exacerbates stereotypes and ignorance and even racism. In our area, that separation won't work because we have to understand each other and work together. I have to add that the land mass here is tiny. as far as resources go, land, water, air, we can't separate. Our economies can't be separated. We have to search for some type of solution that respects the uniqueness of the Jewish people and the Palestinian people, provides each side with a self-determination and its own sense of national identity, but also has enough connection to satisfy the needs that I talked about a minute ago. The type of solution I'm talking about is called some type of federation, confederation. It's like what the United States has. It has states, but it has a federal union. The European Union has separate states, but also has a federation. In our area, I also believe we need some type of hybrid solution, federated solution that has separateness, but also connection. But again, we're not ready to go there yet. It's a pie dream because the two sides have no respect for the other's fundamental belonging to the land or the other's fundamental legitimacy.
Yeah, and that's where the problem is. We're coming to the end. Do you have any message that you want to share with the world?
Well, I want everyone to know that our movement, Roots, Shorashim Judor, has a website and a Facebook page. People should look up Friends of Roots. That's friendsofroots.net. Friendsofroots.net. Don't go to friendsofroots.org because that'll bring you to an organization selling roots in China. And we're not selling roots, we're selling roots. So that's friendsofroots.net. On Facebook, I think we're Friends of Roots. And there you can read more about our work. People who are interested can sign up for the volunteer sheet to get more involved. There's a way to donate to our work. And I guess my final words would be these. I'm an Israeli. I'm a Zionist. I'm a Jew. And I deeply believe in the state of Israel and the righteousness and historical necessity of the state of Israel. But I also believe that the Palestinian people deserve their human and national rights. And therefore I say that I want people to be pro-Israel, but I also want people to be pro-Palestine. And I want people to be pro-Israel and to be pro-Palestine at the same time. Because I believe that many people who are pro-Israel don't realize that by being only pro-Israel, they're really being pro-continuation of the conflict. They're being anti-reconciliation. On the Palestinian side, it's okay to be pro-Palestinian, absolutely, but I believe that many people, many Americans who are pro-Palestine end up being anti-solution, end up being pro-continuation of the conflict. So our plea in Roots is to be pro-Israel and to be pro-Palestine at the same time, which means to be pro-solution. And that's hard. That's hard because each side is always asking for you to support them. And we ask you to support both sides at the same time, which means to support the cause of listening and of tolerance and of respect and of being able to accept the legitimacy of two opposing and conflicting national narratives. That's hard, but that's the only way.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for your time, Rabbi. This has been very, very enlightening.
My pleasure.
I'm so happy we had a chance to talk. We need to stay friends on Facebook.
We'll stay friends on Facebook.
I hope so. And thank you, people, for listening and watching us today. Rabbi Schlesinger is just a very amazing person with a really amazing goal and dream for the world and for Israel. And it would be great to make this dream come true during his lifetime.
Yes.
Do you want to say anything more before I stop the recording?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait.